Origin UX, and this is America's missile defense needs to chill out. Channel task and purpose. Yeah, this is one of the latest video. I'm guessing because of like the Iran thing, right? Iran launched like multiple hundreds of missiles against Israel, and 99% of those were intercepted. So obviously, like a lot of defense comes from USA and like UK and countries like that. I'm guessing mostly US. So yeah, anti-missile defenses, right? Obviously, I knew that they are going to be. I don't know why people get surprised, right? US being like kind of like when it comes to technology, especially chipset and targeting system. Basically, anything that's like come inside like computer based, right? Anything that does like calculation, as accuracy based things. Of course, US is going to be good at it, right? They're basically leading that. They've been leading that from I don't know since the Apollo program or something. But yeah, 99% of all intercepted. That's a surprise even to me. Like, okay, that's an insane amount of accuracy, right? And I heard of it somewhere. Like, I'm pretty sure I saw a thumbnail from like Sandbox or something popping up, like how this is part of some kind of a politics thing. I don't know, but Iran launching missiles and things like that. I don't know. For first time I heard it, I'm like, what the fuck? Is this gonna escalate? But then I slowly realized, like, okay, this is like part of how politics is done or something. I don't know. It's weird. For me, it's just weird. But I don't know. I'm pretty sure Iran was saying like next time you won't see it coming, something like that. I don't know where that's going either. But yeah, I don't know. Things are escalating. But yeah. So this is about the missile defense thing that America has, right? I've been saying that loud nukes. People are panicking about nukes. But which country has really good anti-missile defenses, anti-ICBM technology? They probably don't have to worry about nukes that much. I'm guessing America would be the first of that list. So yeah, let's do it. Remember, if you like my don't forget to subscribe so that way I know which type of videos to react to more. I like watching military style videos, mostly technology type of videos, right? Obviously, I like stories about different things of the past, like Federation and things like that. But I like, information about geopolitics, obviously. I don't like geopolitics. Of course, it's never good. There's always panicky situation. But I like the information about geopolitics, like, keeps me informed. But I like the technology and element like that. So this is about technology video, about how anti-missile technology is working for America. So yeah, it's going to be awesome. That's what it.
The United States and its allies' ability to intercept ballistic missiles was just put to the test, reportedly knocking out between 95 and 99% of missiles fired by Iran. What type of systems does the US use that allows them to instantly detect and track missile launches? And what if an intercontinental ballistic missile with a nuclear warhead was launched at the continental United States? Would the US defense system in the homeland be able to shoot it down? Exactly how much warning would we have to choose how to respond? Since the Cold War, the United States has spent more than $100 billion on missile defense to date. What type of capabilities has this multi-generational system translated into today? I want to go down the rabbit hole of missile defense capabilities. This is the R-7 Semyorka, the world's first intercontinental ballistic missile made by the Soviet Union in 1957. This weapon suddenly made the world a much smaller place with its vast range of 5,000 miles, traveling roughly the distance from Moscow to Washington in just 30 minutes, and capable of delivering a 6,000-pound nuclear warhead. This weapon would change every calculation we had about war between the great powers. A missile defense system aims to protect an area from attack. First, it locates and tracks.
Yeah, so that was the one that with the Sputnik and thing, right? That was the one that panicked USA, and they're like, okay, we need to do something about this, and the Apollo program was the thing, right? Because it was like fear of ICBM, if anything.
Incoming ballistic missiles using satellites and radars. Second, it launches another weapon to destroy the incoming missile before it hits its target. This is often described as hitting a bullet with a bullet. So, how do you build a defensive system based on such odds? Well, you need to tilt the odds in your favor. And to do that, you need to choose your bullet wisely. Interceptors, also known as anti-ballistic missiles or ABMs, these purely defensive missiles usually consist of two parts, and all US interceptors still do: a booster rocket and a kill vehicle. Most interceptors operate on a hit-to-kill basis, where the kill vehicle smashes into the incoming missile to destroy it. However, some interceptors use a blast fragmentation warhead instead. The concept of intercepting missiles in this way really spoke to Cold War era strategists, especially after someone had the idea to equip the interceptors with the genius idea of adding a nuclear warhead to it. A dangerous and antiquated idea that has fortunately since been retired. How did we evolve into a more sophisticated approach? But first, this episode's sponsor is PDS Debt Solutions.
Yeah, man. What if we like intercept a missile with a nuclear missile? What if it missed? Everything's gonna be fine, right? Not like it's gonna like drop somewhere else and like launch a nuke.
All go into debt one time or another in our lives. Sometimes it's to obtain a big ticket item like a house or a car, and other times we may be relying on those plastic cards in our pockets a little too much. Either way, the bigger the debt and the more it's spread out across different loans and creditors, the more daunting it can be. For me, I found that using a service like PDS Debt to consolidate all the loans and bills into one low monthly payment was key to getting out from under it. And it doesn't matter if you have bad, fair, or even good credit. PDS is positioned to help anyone manage their debt and relieve the burden of having a list of debtors to pay every month. PDS Debt makes getting out from under debt a whole lot easier because they customize their approach to fit your solution.
Yeah, we'll go to pdsdebt.com/task23 and support this channel, or go to original video page link.
Task 23 to get your free debt assessment today. I dug up this old New York Times article from 1964 that outlined for the first time how the United States satellite network, its newest network, was able to finally detect clandestine nuclear missile tests halfway across the world. The early warning network was called MIDAS, or Missile Detection Alarm System, which was started in 1959 and had originally been plagued with problems. The way MIDAS worked was by measuring radiation using infrared sensors on the satellites that any missile launch would create. It also worked in collaboration with a tracking radar that was located in southern Turkey. What this ultimately meant was that it could detect missile launches within 5 minutes, as opposed to 15 minutes that the old prior Alaska early warning radars in Greenland and Scotland offered during the 1950s. Realistically, leadership only has about 10-15 minutes to make a decision on how you want to react or verify if it's a real threat. By this point, the United States had some 180 satellites monitoring in space. The Department of Defense in 1964 even commented at the time, saying that they were...
Yeah, I'd still remember that thing, right? Like how sunlight hit the clouds, and Russian basically thought the US had launched a missile or something. And the guy who was in charge of was in disbelief, like, no way that's possible, right? I'm pretty sure all this was happening, like, you only had like 5-10 minutes of response time. So imagine that level of panic, right? That level of like emergency, or you just 10 minutes. If you don't respond now, a city might get destroyed, your city with like millions of people or something, right? But it's like, come on, man, that's not possible. Just like level of mentality that would take. That was insanity back then.
Working on an over-the-horizon capability that would detect missile launches in just mere seconds. Now that's some foreshadowing right there. A lot of times I see people commenting, wondering why countries like the United States, China, and Russia have thousands of nuclear warheads when, hypothetically, it's possible just a few hundred could suffice to destroy the Earth entirely several times over. Well, the potential effectiveness of missile defense systems that we're going to look at might be the answer to that question. Both the Soviets and the United States developed nuclear-armed defense systems that combined a high-altitude interceptor missile, like the US Spartan and Soviet Galosh, with a terminal phase interceptor, like the US Sprint and Soviet Gazelle. Now, the US system was called the Nike Zeus, which was specifically designed to succeed against a few dozen missiles in the event of a Soviet attack. But in response, the Soviets said that they were building hundreds of missiles, so the US had to double down and build hundreds of their own, and reevaluate if the Zeus could handle a lot of missiles at once. This nuclear growth rate was unsustainable and exponentially more dangerous.
I don't get it. Why Nike Zeus? What does Nike mean? Sponsored by Nike? What was that?
Dangerous for everyone. The Cuban Missile Crisis raised the stakes, and after escalating threats from both the Soviets and the United States, both countries decided to sign the Anti-Ballistic Missile Treaty in 1972. The treaty lessened the need for more nuclear weapons to keep deterrence strong by establishing strict limits on missile defenses for both countries, where each side could only have 2 anti-ballistic missile sites, and each site could have a maximum of 100 anti-ballistic missiles.
Yeah, we're not going to lower the nukes itself. We're going to lower the nuke defenses. Because if we lower the nuke defenses, we're going to lower the nukes automatically. It's like wire type of way. Indirect, like touching your ear like that. Okay, there you go.
Despite the idea of deterrence and the fear of mutually assured destruction, the Soviets kept building up their arsenal. In 1978, they had 600 intermediate-range nuclear missiles on land. 2 years later, they added 200 more. By 1983, President Ronald Reagan addressed the nation, saying that the USSR had 1,300 new warheads, adding about 3 new ones each week, while the United States didn't even have 1 new one. Because of this massive buildup, President Reagan announced a new defense system against Soviet first strikes. It was called the Strategic Defense Initiative, or SDI for short. Instead of just scaring off the Soviets, this plan aimed to make their nuclear weapons obsolete. They wanted to do this by setting up 1,000 ground-based missile interceptor and hundreds of interceptors in space, which is why people called it Star Wars. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, the rush to defend against them faded away, and the Strategic Defense Initiative was scaled back. The first thing that was canceled was that space bit. Instead, the focus went to theater systems such as the US Patriot missile. By the end of the 1990s, the US hadn't brought back a national missile defense system because there was a lot of technical problems and it would violate the Anti-Ballistic Missile Treaty. But then, the next year, 9/11 happened and the world changed. President George Bush quickly pulled out of the ABM treaty, and the US got to work on a defense system against missiles from smaller powers or rogue states.
Who are we talking about with these smaller powers? North Korea and Iran. Because the ballistic missiles from Russia and China would very likely overwhelm the system. However, an attack from North Korea or Iran could potentially be intercepted.
They needed the system to be operational by October 2004, and they named it the Ground-Based Mid-Course Missile Defense System, and it's still around today, or GMD for short. It's designed to protect all 50 states from a limited long-range ballistic missile attack. In truth, the GMD is a global system with 11 elements that span 15 time zones, and each element has to be precisely coordinated, and if something fails, everything can go wrong. According to Annie Jacobson's book, Nuclear War, A Scenario, in which she interviewed the actual military and civilian experts who built these weapons and developed all the response plans, she outlined how modern-day satellite missile tracking can detect an ICBM launch in just mere seconds. However, on the other hand, new developments in submarine and air-launched nuclear missiles meant that instead of a 30-minute warning, it could be as little as 15 minutes to reach their targets. Let's talk about the elements that make the GMD what it is, starting with how it tracks missiles, and then we'll dive into how it destroys them. The GMD tracking depends on 7 types of sensors: land, sea, and space. The land ones include 2 early warning radars, one in the East Coast and one located in the West Coast, and 3 upgraded early warning radars that are currently deployed in California, the UK, and Greenland. These radars classify objects as threatening, non-threatening, and then the higher resolution radars are used to observe and discriminate. There's also 5 units of the Army-Navy Transportable Radar Surveillance, ANTPY-2 radar, which are high-resolution X-band radars built specifically for missile defense.
Yeah, look, I think when it comes to US, obviously the level of things they have with the Air Force also like controlling Space Force, which is like, it's going to be their own thing now. Also NASA being there, right? I think there are a lot of anti-defense things they have. They're probably not going to tell people, because certain things might even like, let's just say, break certain treaty here and there. But yeah, when it comes to US, I'm definitely sure of that they have like much more detection and things like that than everybody knows of. Right, officially, especially with the satellites and things, like, because the level of things that NASA innovated, and also like defense that DARPA and things like that has innovated is going to be ridiculous. So this is the things we know of now. But yeah, when it comes to detection, yeah, US will know when something's happening, right?
The US has 2 in Japan, 3 in the Middle East, and there's the massive Cobra Dane, a large L-band radar stationed in Alaska.
Damn.
It looks like a colossal speaker with a 95 feet in diameter.
What the hell is that? I've never seen that one. What is the scale? Oh, 95. Whoa. You are kidding me.
It can detect objects out to 2,000 miles away, giving it the best detectability performance of small objects among existing systems. Finally, the Long-Range Discrimination Radar, or the LRDR, because far-away judgy things doesn't sound technical enough. It's a long-range antenna made up of solid-state radar blocks that can be pieced together like an overly complex set of Legos to scale up to the size of the radar. This radar is located in Alaska and isn't fully operational yet. There's also the C-band X-band radar SBX. This unique radar sits atop a decommissioned North Sea oil rig now stationed in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. It delivers exceptionally high-resolution images. However, the high resolution comes with a trade-off: a narrow 25-degree viewing arc. In fact, in November 2016, the SBX was dispatched to North Korean waters to monitor the testing of its new IRB missile, adding to these layers of early warning systems. If we
Like this is literally like ship whole radar like that, right? Near North Korea. That's some badass shit. I'm not gonna lie. Or ship, sure. Submarine, something like that. The whole fucking radar like that. Oh, we're gonna ship to North Korea. We wanna observe. Imagine North Korea saying that. What the fuck? What is that?
look up to the skies, there's the Space Tracking and Surveillance System, which are two satellites orbiting the Earth and tracking missile launches, using their sensors and data processors to discriminate between warheads and decoys. And there's the Space-Based Infrared System, which is a constellation of 8 integrated satellites in orbit, plus processing and command control centers.
These were the very systems that were used in April 2024 to instantly detect and track Iran's ballistic missiles fired against Israel.
Now, the ground-based mid-course defense system's destructive phase is primarily carried out by the ground-based interceptors, or GBIs for short. They're located at 2 main sites. The first site is in Fort Greely, Alaska, housing 4 GBIs, while the second site is at Vandenberg Air Force Base in California, where 40 deployed GBIs are. In total, there are 44 GBIs in operation. These interceptors are launched from silos and targeting ballistic missiles during their mid-course phase, when they're at their highest trajectory and outside the atmosphere. Each GBI comprises 3 components. First is the boost vehicle, a multi-stage rocket booster that propels the kill vehicle from its silo into space. The boost vehicle's 3 stages enable longer range intercepts. Second is the EKV itself. After the booster burns out, the EKV separates and uses onboard sensors to detect an incoming warhead before maneuvering to collide with it. Equipped with its own seeker, guidance system, and motor, all of this sounds good, alright? But does it really work? And will it protect the homeland in case of an attack?
But what about the critics of America's missile defense system? What do they have to say?
The Union of Concerned Scientists has called the GMD system hugely expensive, counterproductive, offer no proven capability to protect the United States, and no credible path forward for achieving success.
The fuck? The fuck is that statement? Hugely expensive. Yeah, like security is not cheap. You want to live or you want to die, right? No proven capabilities. Yeah, people haven't shot at USA or something like until now. So proven is like, come on, man. You seriously gonna say that? Right? This armor's no good. Nobody has shot at me yet. Yeah, but yeah, it shows promise in lab and things. Right? You want to get shot at first and then you want to wear an armor. So this whole statement is weird.
Scholars, experts, members of the military, and politicians have all replicated the message that GMD isn't enough. All their disapproval can be summarized in 4 points of concern. In 2022, the American Physical Society released a study assembled by a group of 13 physicists and nuclear weapons policy experts, where they raised questions regarding the effectiveness of the GMDs against one of the biggest challenges faced by the missile defense system: countermeasures. For instance, attackers might use lightweight decoys to confuse the sensors of interceptor missiles. Since objects of differing weights follow the same path in space, deploying decoys during the mid-course phase can make it difficult for interceptor missiles to accurately detect the actual warhead. This may lead the missile defense system to attempt to destroy all incoming objects. depleting its limited supply of valuable interceptors. Likewise, cooled shrouds can be employed to decrease the temperature of a warhead, making it either invisible to interceptor missiles, which rely on infrared sensors, or reducing the interceptor's capability to detect the warheads rapidly. The study found no viable or effective improvement against these countermeasures. Another major problem is that the system could easily be overwhelmed by a large number of missiles. According to the former Assistant Secretary of Defense and U.S. Chief Weapons Evaluator Philip Coyle, all missile defense systems can be overwhelmed. All missile defense systems have limitations.
I mean, obviously.
And those limitations can be exploited by the offense. By definition,
Look, man, this all feels weird to me. An armor can be overwhelmed. You're not gonna put armor on tank. The armor vest you're gonna wear is gonna get overwhelmed if you get shot enough. You're not gonna wear a vest. I mean, nobody said like we have 100% definitive defense. You can't have that, right? I mean, sure, we want to control everything, but we can't. You can only do what you can do, right? Of course, like your system can be overwhelmed if it's like thrown like a multiple hundred or thousands of missiles at it. No system is gonna work. That's the whole point, right? But you need to have the best thing you can have. Nothing's gonna ensure 100% safety. That's the point, right? To me, I always think like, okay, there should be like, if multiple missiles are detected, there should be anti-missiles that basically explode or basically, and not nuke, but basically big enough, like what is that, mother of all bomb and things like that, right? With a larger area of destruction, basically. So even if they're decoys, everything gets destroyed in the air or something, right? AOE damage, I don't know.
it is only if the attack is limited that the defense can have a hope of not being overwhelmed.
On April 13, 2024, one of the largest adversarial ballistic missile attacks in history was launched against Israel by Iran. And initial reports seem to indicate that Iran tried many of these exact countermeasure decoy techniques to attempt to overwhelm Israel's air defense systems. We know Iran attacked Israel with 120 ballistic missiles, 30 cruise missiles, and 170 drones. According to the United States, 95 to 99% of all of Iran's ballistic missiles and weapons were intercepted successfully. There are still competing theories about whether Iran used their full capabilities or if Israel used their full defensive capabilities, but either way, it's an indication that hitting a bullet with another bullet has become more feasible. However, it's true just because fighter jets can intercept cruise and intermediate range missiles doesn't necessarily mean success against intercontinental ballistic missiles has improved. ICBMs travel 27 times faster and launch.
ICBM is completely different, right? Once it enters the atmosphere, you have extremely small time before it's gonna hit. That's the whole point. ICBM is like you won't even know it's coming and before it just explodes, right? It basically enters space and then just basically, it's a ballistic missile, right? Yeah, so it's going to be insanely fast. It has such an, kinetic energy that it doesn't need a warhead. Even if you just like throw a shell, that will have enough kinetic energy. So when it just explode, it's going to explode like how asteroids explode, basically.
Multiple payloads that can maneuver in midair. That's why I think one of the most impressive lessons gleaned from Iran's attack on Israel was that Israel's Arrow interceptor appeared to have scored an exo-atmospheric kill against a ballistic missile. That means it hit a missile outside the Earth's atmosphere, which is extremely difficult to do, and some placed the odds at as low as 50% in the past. Either way, we're quickly learning about the capabilities of new interceptor missiles.
Laura Grego, a nuclear expert at MIT, who co-chaired a recent study of the GMD, said, quote, "This idea of an impenetrable shield against an enormous arsenal of Russian missiles is just a fantasy. In the end, the core of this issue is still the same that existed in the 1970s. You can produce missiles way faster than interceptors. The second point of concern are the GMD's failed intercept tests. When the US has tested its own ABM anti-ballistic missile systems, the success rate has been considerably less than 50%, and that's with the AMB operators knowing in advance when and where incoming will occur and their route. The third point of concern is the cost. In 2016, the GMD had already cost more than $40 billion. If you take into account the 70 years of research and investment, the number is closer to $350 billion.
The final point of concern that's been raised is that theoretically the GMD isn't designed to protect against Russian or Chinese intercontinental ballistic missiles.
It's designed to be effective against an accidental or rogue missile launch. This comes as no surprise. It's known the US Department of Defense says so in its 2022 National Defense Strategy that the GMD is neither intended nor capable of defeating the large and sophisticated ICBM from Russia and the PRC. The United States relies on strategic deterrence to address those threats. David Baresh, the professor at the University of Washington who's written about preventing nuclear war, recently said that the prospects of the US or anyone successfully intercepting ICBMs are meager.
But does that only refer to China's 350 ICBMs and Russia's 760? Because if we look at North Korean capabilities, they have about 50 nuclear warheads in total, but they only have a max of about...
All right, I'm not gonna lie, I didn't see that coming, right? I always assumed that anti-ICBM is gonna work effectively, or at least that's what I hoped. Knowing that it's like capability is low, still like there's like, you know, like cynic conspiracy mind in my head, basically thinking like probably US or countries like that have like decent defense system, but they're not gonna publish it or something. Because when you really technology wise, when you really think of it, like let's just basic science wise, right, physics wise, I mean, if with enough of years, which I think they have like more than decade or something, like with a decent technology, they should be able to perfect it if you like put real effort into it. So I have this feeling that they probably have like decent anti-ICBM technology, but they're just not going to tell the world. Because if you tell the world like we have this, they can basically make something that counter that. So obviously there's a reason why a lot of things are classified, the real things, right? The top edge technology you have, you're probably going to keep it classified. Why would you want to tell the world? So that's what I'm thinking.
16 ICBM launchers, if we believe what they've shown in their military parades. What this means is the United States' current missile defense system could theoretically shoot those down, even if we assume a low hit probability of 50%. One day before I published this video, I noticed that Lockheed Martin had just won a $17 billion contract to produce 20 of the new next generation GBI interceptor. Now the main difference with this technology is that it's going to have a multiple kill vehicle, which means it'll be able to strike multiple nuclear payloads. So the hit probability will only increase. And it's said that this will become operational by 2028.
The Pentagon's top testing official, the Director of Operations Test and Evaluation, .E&T, published a report that found that taken together, the various missile defense programs are capable of doing what they're designed to do. What this means is that the US is not absolutely defenseless, as some critics have said, and that it still leads the world in terms of missile defense. Also, I should note that the Pentagon challenged the study by the American Physical Society, and the organization has since unpublished the study to revise its conclusions. Back in the day, the United States and the Soviet Union signed the Anti-Ballistic Missile Treaty to put limits on these missile defense systems.
Yeah, look, man. I like, theorists, right? I like, physicists, obviously. But in the end, some people, when you know, if you don't know anything more besides theory, right? If you don't know, if you're not in this field, like just in this technology field, and if you just like try to think of it as like most basic way, right? I don't know how their study was done, but I can see how as sometimes some critics overlooks a lot of things and doesn't realize the real world scenarios, and just like based on like paper just realize, oh, this is not effective, this is not 100% effective, 90% is not good. You don't know where the conclusion comes from, right? Most of them, their statement always make me feel like they are saying like, oh, this is not 100% proof, nobody said it's going to be, but it's decent enough type of way, right? So Pentagon probably just tell them like, don't be an a-holes, right? Like nothing is 100% sure, right? You're coming off like, okay, this system doesn't work, but that's not the case or something. Or maybe threaten or something, or like to delete that fucking post.
But now, with new players on the scene like China, Iran, and North Korea, the rules of the game have changed, and deterring seems to be insufficient to keep the risks under control. Some see the United States missile defense system as a guardian angel, standing watch to protect against incoming threats from the skies. Others see it as a dated, ineffective mirage against larger and more pressing threats. Do you think the US can protect itself with what it has? Does it need a new system? Let me know in the comments. In the meantime, I'd really appreciate...
Does it need a new system? It always needs a new system. There is not. It's like you can't have enough type of way when it comes to something like this, right? There's always going to be unpredictability when talking about something like ICBMs. right? You can, the more, okay, it's 95%. We need new technology, that's 97%. We need even more new technology, that's like 98%, 98.5%. Every time you're going to need something good, right? So I think the Iran thing where they just like said 95 to 99% is intercepted, that's a good indication, like, okay, it's decent, right? Maybe some sophisticated missile, something from China or something might be too overwhelming. But even then, okay, I'll tell you what. Look, nuclear war is coming. Would you rather, no, I'm not saying that. Imagine the nuclear war is coming, right? Now, would you rather have your 10 cities destroyed or 3, right? That is your only option. If your answer is like 3, 4, not 10, because 3, 4 is less than 10, then there your defense system somewhat works, right? If your answer is not have defense system compared to the defense system, that's not much of a thing, is it? So that's the thing. This is what we have right now. This is the bleeding tech, right? If it works, not works, however it works, it is what it is, right? It doesn't work completely. That's really not true. But yeah, it's not complete Guardian, right? There is nothing complete Guardian, right? Even if you like wear a Kevlar vest or something, it's not going to protect against like 50 cal, BMG or something. So everything, even the tank armors are not impenetrable, right? Something will destroy it. There is always going to be something that will overpower some defense system. But that's the point of it, right? At least it will protect against 80-90% of things. Alright, well, that was America's missile defense. Needs to chill out by channel task and purpose. If you like my next subscribe, and I'll see you next time.